Awesome, man.
Cool.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Let's do it, man. I'm excited.
Awesome. Yeah. So this podcast is all about you and your journey in music and how you got to where you are now. And we'll talk about the new EP as well.
Sweet. That room is so clean and there's nothing else in there but those two posters. It's kind of crazy, man.
Yeah, well, it's funny because we just my family and I just moved to Nashville from Southern California. So we were in San Diego. We just moved here like I don't know 2 weeks ago. So it's kind of a placeholder studio setup until I can get everything going on.
It's cool. It's cool. I thought that was like the look, like minimal.
Maybe I'll keep it, yeah, like a minimalist. Maybe I'll just keep it like this.
I don't mind it. I have too much stuff. So
right on, dude. Again, so yeah, thank you so much for doing this. I did read. Were you born and raised in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, man. Born and raised in Brooklyn, Flatbush section of Brooklyn. My dad is from Jamaica. My mom's just from Bed-Stuy.
Mm-hmm.
My parents met and had my two brothers. Then 10 years later, they had me. And so it is.
10-year difference between you and your brothers?
10 and 13 years.
Okay, wow. Yeah, I'm 11 years older than my sister, so I'm sure she feels what you do. I'm sure with the separation there. Did you ever live in the same house? Like at the time, I had already moved out. Like when my sister was of age to like kind of understand what was going on. But was that kind of the same?
Oh, we all grew up together. Yeah, we were all together.
That's cool.
My middle brother, he went to college in West Virginia, so he left, and my oldest brother was him and I were pretty much holding the house down. When I was like starting to get into music and stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, how did you get into music?
I think like most kids. So I have to blow my nose actually.
Oh, go for it.
I have really bad allergies too. So sorry, I'm gonna.
Dude, don't worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, like most kids from my neighborhood, you had, I wouldn't say few options, but you got a couple options of stuff you want to do. Like there were kids that wanted to do sports, playing basketball, football, baseball, and I was never really super good at any sports. I like playing basketball, but I wasn't like amazing at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in high school, I guess I was writing more like poetry. It was kind of funny because like most rappers don't call their raps poems, but they were definitely more poetic form.
Sure.
And I really wanted to get into making beats, and I had been writing for the latter part of my life. Like as a kid, I was always into reading, and I was a kid that brought the extra big book bag and bring all my Goosebumps books to school.
Oh, there
all
of
them, like, like I was always into literature and fiction and science. So I think, in high school, I became like a part of a rap group, I guess. Mm-hmm. I guess so. And that's probably when it started. And I started making beats and figuring out how to play keyboard, and I fell in love with making music for fun. This is before anything else was really real. That's probably the most fun that you have is when you reward yourself for little victories, like especially when you do something that you hear in somebody else's music. You're like, oh, I wonder how they do that, and then you finally figure it out. You're like, oh,
yeah,
that's how they do that. I did that thing that they do. Yeah.
That's awesome. Keyboards, was that the first instrument you learned, or did you do like band prior to getting into?
Yeah, I was in band in high school too. I played trumpet.
Oh, cool. When did you pick up trumpet? Was that the first instrument you learned?
Well, keyboard was the first because I played it as a kid,
Oh, okay.
But like, it wasn't like, I wouldn't say I was proficient. I just had one in my house.
Oh, okay. You didn't take lessons or anything? Or did you do a little bit? Okay.
Nah, dude. Yeah, I'm pretty self-taught on everything.
And even trumpet, or how'd you get into trumpet?
The trumpet stuff was just like you had to take music course in high school. So they were like, "Oh, you want to join band?" I was like, "Okay." And I remember my teacher. I think her name was Lori Friedman. Lori. It was weird too. My high school, you call people by their first names, even the teachers.
That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah. We had a half a day every Wednesday too, which was really cool. I went to Brooklyn College High School.
Okay.
I know that sounds weird, but it's a high school division of a college. Yeah, and she made us play with a mouthpiece for like 3 months. Like, and if
Just the
you weren't like
mouthpiece?
committed, yeah, she was just like, yo, like if you don't want to imitate your favorite songs doing that, I won't let you bring home a trumpet, you know. And I was one of the kids that kept doing it. So she let me, she let me bring it home and practice. And yeah, I eventually gave up on that, but I played saxophone and trumpet in band, and then I just
Wow.
started to rap after that. Yeah.
Sure, sure. So what, you started to make beats when you're in high school as well?
Yeah, for sure. Probably
And,
in like 10th grade.
okay. And then how did you learn that? Did you just get like a laptop with some like Logic or something, or I don't know, Fruity Loops
Yeah.
or whatever at the
I
time?
was using Fruity Loops for sure. Fruity Loops was like the quintessential production. It was like Pro Tools. I knew about Pro Tools. I knew I couldn't afford that. And I knew it was really hard to get into. And then it was like Fruity Loops. So a friend of mine, we used to do like beat challenges, and we would, because I think we had the demo of it, and I think you couldn't save or something like that. Something would happen after a certain period of time. And both of
Sure.
us had the demo. So we would be like, yo, you got to make a beat until the demo like kicks you off or mutes your stuff. I forgot what it did. So him and I would just like do beat challenges and send it to each other. And then I was just like, man, like I've always been into music. I was introduced to music as a young guy from my
Mhm.
parents mostly. But I had a very interesting uh, scope of music that I was able to listen to. You know, my mom really enjoyed 60s Motown, you know,
Oh,
and I was
cool.
introduced to that before hip hop music.
Mhm.
You know, the Barry Gorey era, you know, with Sam Cooke and James Brown and the
Sure.
Clientels and Commodores and Ray Goodman and Brown and Percy Sledge and BB King. And it was a myriad of what I consider the best era of music,
Mhm.
the soul era. And then my dad was more into reggae, so I learned a lot of Peter Tosh and Bob Marley,
Oh, that's
Yellow
cool.
Man,
Mhm.
you know. And then I had my brothers who showed me R&B, and hip hop. You know, my oldest brother was a big Wu-Tang fan, so
Oh, that's my favorite.
you already know how that goes. Like,
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I had a chance to interview Intel and I was like just nerding out on his dad. I'm like, sorry, this is about you, but tell me some more about your dad.
it's like, yo, yeah, like, what's the best dad story you got, right?
Yeah, right. That's awesome. Cool. So that, I mean, sounds like you had a pretty amazing, spectrum of music that you're brought up with. With the once you guys were doing those challenges on Fruity Loops and kind of doing the beat battles, when did you start putting your poetry or your raps over the beats?
I would say like by the time I was a junior in high school, I was already like putting stuff. I think SoundClick was cool at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and some other Bandcamp might have been cool at the time. Still cool, but as like there was no streaming, you know, there was no Spotify, there was nothing. It was you
Mm-hmm.
put your stuff on YouTube and hope that people click it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think yeah, by the time I was a junior, my friends and I would press like actual CDs when people bought them, and we would give them out to all the homies at school. We would charge, and I remember we all like printed all our lyrics out and put it in like an envelope and mailed it to ourselves, and then sealed it because we thought that that was like if it ever blew up one day, it would prove that we own the
Oh,
rights
like
to the music.
yeah, it was like a copyright. I've heard of
Yeah,
that before. Yeah. So if you send something through the mail, right, doesn't it become like it's at that point it's like
something.
copywritten? Yeah, I've heard that before. That's super
Yeah,
interesting to me. You
we
guys
all
are
thought that
onto
that was
something
it.
there, though, right? I mean,
Yeah, we were
that's
just like ahead. I guess ahead of the time in that way. I think one of us, I don't think it was me, like researched it and was like, dude, like you can do this to like kind of like legitimize yourself a bit. And we thought that that was it. Like we would really blow up off of that.
Mhm.
We didn't, but it
We
was cool,
did
you
at
know.
some point. So, well, from that high school group, when did you like? Were you guys performing out or anything, or is it mainly just recording,
Nah, dude,
putting it on a
it
CD,
was it
and
was at that time it was so innocent
mm-hmm.
because there was nobody to impress but ourselves, and we were just trying to make each other laugh and impress each other with more references to, metaphors and funny shit. And this is before Flatbush Zombies. These are like not even the group I'm in. I was in a different group with like a different circle of people.
Okay.
But we definitely set precedents for like what I eventually learned to do with another group years later. But it was a short span of after I graduated from high school that I was still making music, but it wasn't like people were paying attention yet, and it was kind of weird because, a lot of that music and the stuff that I worked on during that time was kind of washed away because the group that I formed as Flatbush Zombies was so majorly more successful that it's like everything before it became so unimportant, or it just didn't pop up. It didn't populate on the internet, or it wasn't talked about anymore because this other thing is so much more popular,
Sure. When did you start? Because Flatbush Zombies is huge. So how did that start? Like, was that a relationship with those guys you had prior to forming the group, or how did you guys get together and start that?
We've been friends since we were kids, So
okay.
When I was in high school, I knew these guys way before I went to high school. We were friends since junior high school, elementary school. I used to go to the school around the corner from my house in Flatbush. And me and Meech lived on the same block. And we went to the same school for a couple of years until I went to a different school. By the time I got to third grade, I went to like this like quote unquote smart school. So they took me from a school in the hood and put me in a different school in a different hood that was supposed to be for like elevated children.
Okay.
And we were friends before musical partners, I guess.
Sure.
And Juice lived on the Junction, which is about 10 minutes from my house. And they went to school together, and he introduced me to him. We were probably like 11 or some shit by the time I knew Juice.
Oh, wow.
And
super young.
Yeah, bro, we were kids, man.
Yeah.
And they would come to my house, we would play video games and talk shit. But by that time I was making music, and I saw that they had potential to be musicians, and they definitely could rap and they understood what made good music, and we all have good taste in music. So it was pretty like effortless, it was just like I was already making beats, I was already making music, so I had the place to record. It was my bedroom, but I still had a place to record. I had beats, I had a vision, I had the drive, I had the passion, and they would come over and we would smoke weed and make music.
That's Well, with the first group that you formed, was it hard to kind of break away from them and then start, I would say, Flatbush Zombies, or was it kind of, that was like hanging out and just kind of having fun, and this became something more serious?
Yeah, dude, like how those stories end. They never end well. We don't. I don't speak to any of those guys from high school anymore. I speak to one of them. One of them is still a good friend of mine.
Sure.
Let's say he still came along the ride with me. I think everybody else kind of, for whatever reason, we just stopped being friends. We stopped talking to each other. I think there's a bit of like a little jealousy, a little confusion, a little everything.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
They see you, continuing to really, really pursue something, and then it becomes successful. They're probably like, oh, well, maybe I should have just kept really working hard at this. It's almost one of those things where people, they get jealous, but it's not like you just woke up one morning and were like, okay, I'm going to form Flatbush Zombies and we're going to get huge. You know what I mean?
It wasn't like that was my, I didn't like pray on it. It just like kind of happened. Yeah.
Right. Well, when did you start seeing success with it? Like how did the next level kind of happen for you with that, with Flatbush Zombies?
I think we played South by Southwest.
Wow.
And that's when things started to like really kick off, because we had this song, Thug Waffle, that started to go viral. And it was weird because I wasn't in the video. And then it's like, well, are you in the group if you're not in the video? And I'm like, yeah, it's my beat. It's my production, but and it's like, well, you don't have a verse in the song. I'm like, you don't have to rap on everything that you produce. Is he in the group? Is he not in the group? I'm confused. There's only 2 microphones. Why is it not another microphone for Eric? But we went through a very interesting period of, like I was saying, where it's like, oh, what if this guy, I thought he was a solo artist or whatever. And then I joined the group, and I kind of, like I said, we went to South by. It started to kind of form like, oh, these are the guys that are responsible for this really unique sound that's coming out of New York. And I think a lot of people thought we were very weird. They still think we're weird, but a lot of the publications were writing shit like hip hop kids take acid ? And it's just like you'd be surprised how far clickbait and titles go. I think that maybe some people thought we were a gimmick, but we, like I was mentioning to you, like we all came up from very musical households. We understand music. So even if people thought for a while that it was a gimmick driven group, we knew that eventually it would come down to the music, and that's where we would win, because when you ask us about our knowledge of music or life or spirituality, we had a lot of answers for that. But maybe on the outside, you just thought that these were guys that were taking acid, And the funniest shit about it is that I never did that. They were into that and I never did it. And I would get grouped with all the things associated with that just because of the company I was in. And,
right.
Somewhat of our message is, and I feel like I was the person in the group, or am the person in the group, to tell people that they can be open-minded without doing drugs.
Right.
And I think that it became taboo for the group to kind of be like, I gotta explain it, like, yeah, they're like this, but they're not really like that. They're like this though. It's like really hard to
put you in a label place, or put you in like a little box.
Because there it is. Exactly. It's hard to do that because you got me in there. It's easy to do that for the two guys that associate with expansive drug use, which is open-minded drugs, and I was the one that didn't do it. So it's like, how could you say that this is a drug group? It's like, or whatever, cloud, what do you call it? Cloud rap or cloud, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I know what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's interesting. Well, don't you produce all the beats for all the songs?
Yeah.
Or most of them? Yeah. And I mean, I feel like that's a driving force when it comes to the music of any hip hop song or any song in general. Like, I mean, there's the rapping and there's the melodies, but they wouldn't be there if it wasn't for what you had already laid down originally.
For sure. I think that a lot of times it's like, producers are heralded now amongst this generation. Was it Generation ZX? I don't know if I know
Gen Z or whatever. Yeah.
But like, these kids get it. Like, man, the producer. Like, man, you ain't shit without a producer. Growing up, bro, being a producer was not cool. It was not cool. There was no cool. Like you had like a Pharrell or whatever, that kind of, for my generation anyway, it lets you know that you could be smart and be into cool fashion stuff and have this verbose, like catalog of music, different styles. But those things were happening while I was being an artist. Now I'm over 30 years old. So now those people have already succeeded. So it's easy to say, well, come on, Eric, there's Pharrell's, there's Teddy Riley's, there's these guys. RZA, but during that time, these people were still flourishing their career. And for me, it was just like, producers, like, it's like, what do you don't rap? Or, it was kind of like insulting, but I did rap. I rapped before I produced, but I got kind of a stigma like, oh, you just make beats. You know what I mean? And I'm like, dude, like, that's not the case. But thankfully things took a turn and now people value producers a lot. More.
I was gonna say, man, the Instrumentals, the Volume 2 record that you have up on Spotify, that album is so awesome. Like, I can just,
thanks, man.
yeah, like, I mean, I'll just put that on and just be like doing stuff about the house. You know what I mean? It's just like a chill. I think it's such a rad record, and I wanted to tell you that while we're talking.
Oh, thank you, man.
Yeah,
thanks, man.
It's albums like that don't get, I don't think, as much credit as they should. Because everybody's looking for when's the hook gonna start, or when's the vocal gonna hit. It's not, if you don't hear it within the first like 15 seconds, people are almost turned off now.
Oh, they might skip it.
Yeah, right. So I mean, I think that record is amazing. But let's talk about well, let's talk about the new EP that you just put out. So where were you when COVID hit, and were you guys working on Flatbush Zombies stuff? And then you decided to put out the solo record, or were you kind of already doing solo stuff? Like, where were you when that all happened?
Um, I have copious amounts of solo music and music that's never seen the light of day. That's just my nature. I'm just a creative person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've clearly, like you said, instrumentals. I've done other projects that kind of showcase that I was interested in doing things on my own. But I think
Mm-hmm.
that, like you said, the scope of the group, the optics of the group is just like we want to hear them together. We want to hear them together. And for a long time, I would always wait to what I felt was the opportune time to release music. But I just felt like when COVID started to really become worldwide, I was just like, if I don't do this now, I don't know when I'm going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had these ideas and I have this passion to do things and tell my own individual story. I've always felt like that.
Mm-hmm.
When I think we had did the video for Afterlife with James Blake right before COVID had began, and we went to Paris to shoot the video. And
Wow.
we shot the video, and by the time we had come back, COVID was a real issue, and we were
Whoa.
like,
So
damn, we
you're in a
just,
different country when this all started then.
yeah, like
Whoa.
people, we were just like, thank God we left, because now I don't think we can go back, and it was, I don't even know how many weeks had surpassed after that, but it was just like, we just missed it, they locked it down right after that,
Mm-hmm.
and we couldn't leave the country. So yeah, once that had began, I found myself a home, clearly like everyone else, a lot, and sitting in front of all this gear and all of my instruments and shit. And I just felt like, did I want to produce a record, or do I want to say something? And I just felt like I wanted to say something that I never said.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like to produce something like I normally would just be like, oh, the dude from Flatbush Zombies dropped a new project. And it's like, that's cool. But I feel like what I wanted to say was to cement myself into history, to know that this was a project that I thought about putting out, um, when people needed to hear it,
Mm-hmm.
and hear a message that I feel like is no disrespect to anybody that released music that wasn't about reflective times, or conscious music
Mm-hmm.
during that time. But I just feel a little silly playing music about living lavishly and being in fantasy world when you got George Floyd protests happening outside my house. It just felt very
Mm-hmm.
guilty. It felt very uncomfortable. And to be honest with you, I foresaw, which I kind of feel right now, that people would forget about that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like it's almost like what happened last year. People just say, "Oh, COVID." I'm like,
No.
nah,
Yeah.
bro.
Mm-mm.
Last year was a fucked up year. It was one of the weirdest years that I really, and this is not just myself. I'm speaking on behalf of all the people who have been playing this project. It's just like, bro, I needed that. You know what I'm saying? Like I needed that, because I just feel like people forget, and it becomes COVID raps or quarantine bars. I didn't want to do quarantine album. I wanted to just do something that was a story and be transparent about what I was going through, things that I felt, to create side of reflective moments or affirmations that are positive, to
Mm-hmm.
uplift people and make them understand that they're not alone in this war. Because whether it's a racial war or social and all these different things, is segmented in so many different arguments that you can't just say, you can't point on one. I have to kind of like just say, yo, I can't lose, period.
Mm-hmm.
And you can apply that to whatever you want. You could be battling cancer, you could be battling COVID, you could be dealing with a racial disparaging thing, you could be dealing with a relationship with your partner. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
different things, and all those things change. The dynamics of the world change once you're around someone 24/7,
Right.
and
Right.
or alone 24/7. And that's the things I was thinking about. I was like, man, can I future proof myself? Because most of the time I heard that terminology being used for technology, like buy this laptop to future proof yourself for 5 years. And it's like, if we're giving all this attention to technology, what about the people who made the technology? What about ourselves? How do
Sure.
we future proof ourselves? Because for the next 5 years, I want to live as best as I can too. For the
Mm-hmm.
next 10 years, I want to live. And if I know that information, I want to tell everybody. And it's up to you to really believe me or listen or give me a chance. But as of right now, a lot of people have been like telling me, this is something I knew you were capable of doing, but the narrative becomes a bit skewed, like I said, when you're in a group, because there's only so much you can say within your verse, But I've always had really deep thoughts about all the things I was talking about, and losing my
Right.
mother. two years ago to diabetes, you know, and my mother was blind, so there was a bit of no, it's okay. You know, I think growing up with a mom who was able to see you, and then her losing her ability to see as I became more mature and experienced puberty throughout college is when she started to lose her sight, and that changed my whole perspective of how I viewed life. You know, it made me feel very fortunate for what I have, but I also felt kind of sorry for people who view people with disabilities as lesser, you know, because I would go to her to Helen Keller and to the doctor, and I would see people treat her like she's a child because she was sick, which I never really quite understood why when people have ailments, why you speak to them like, oh my God.
Like down on
they don't want
right.
to be reminded. Yeah, they
right.
don't want to be reminded of that shit. They kind of want us to talk like me and you are talking, you know?
Right.
But there's no ambassador or a person that has been through something like that doesn't suffer from it themselves. That's the face of it, you know? That's why I was like, I have to do something about this, you know? I have to champion the people who don't have a voice, you know? And I don't have to be of it to be part of it, you know?
Sure. And I'm sure with that, everybody, if they somebody in that position, they wouldn't want to be like talked down to, or like, just because you have a certain disability doesn't make you any different than an able-bodied person. Yeah, at all.
At all.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, so with this record, was it something that you started working on like once everything kind of locked down because of situations with, you know, being in a group in Flatbush Zombies, like you guys ever have to work together and collaborate together? Now you're kind of stuck by yourself, I'm sure, for some point. Like, is this when you were like, you know what, I really need to have a lot to say and I want to start putting it out? Did you start the project right around that time as well?
Yeah, like I had been all the songs that are on the project, I know it's only 5, it's not like all, like there's 50 of them. 4 of them were made during the quarantine.
Okay.
Let It Go, the most successful one, I would say, is the only song I made next to the individuals that were part of the record. So I guess in ways, if I already had planted seeds for what future proof before I thought of what the title was and all that stuff, I was still working on music right before we had a lockdown. And that was that song, you know, Romeo came to my house and he played it. There's actually a record for Loyle Carner who's on it, but he wasn't, I think he didn't write to it at the time. I wasn't even supposed to have the record, you know? And Romeo played it for me and I was like, bro, this shit is fucking crazy, bro. I have to rap on this. And he was like, go ahead. And I wrote my verse, no lie, maybe like 20 minutes.
Wow.
I laid it down and we were just like, yo, this is a hit, you know what I'm saying? And we had played it for Linden, who was Romeo's partner in FARR. And he's like, dude, this is great, but like, it's for Loyle. Like, he just didn't write to it yet. And I was like, damn. He's like, but I'll play it for him and see what he says. And when Loyle heard it, he FaceTimed me like, yeah, yo, like, I know exactly what to write about. Like, thank you, you know, and he wrote his verse that night too, and he recorded it, and here the song is, you know. So, you know, that being the only song that it's ironic that that's the song that had the most, I would say, the most reception from people, whether it's the beat or the chorus, whatever. That was the only song that I made without thinking about being locked down forever. The rest of them were like in the turmoil of like
everything,
the lockdown hit, and I just was like writing every day, and I knew that if somebody else produced the project, I could focus on just what I had to say. Because a lot of times, you know, as a producer, you overthink shit. You got a lot of stuff in your mind that you're trying to get out, and you think about levels and mixing. It's like, wait, what's the chorus?
Right.
You know, what's the purpose of what you're trying to say? If somebody else worried about that, it made it a lot easier for me to just be a lyricist, you know, and you know, I barely cursed on this whole project. I think there's one song with Coltrane, just because we said fuck in the chorus. The rest of the songs don't have any curses.
And was there a reason behind it, or is that it just came out that way?
It just came out that way. There was no need to, you know, especially personally, and this may be a little whatever, but like, I just don't think like screaming and yelling is always going to really create resolve, especially when it comes to things like murders, you know, and people being treated unfairly. It's like everybody's screaming and burning and throwing shit, bro. Like, did that fix anything before? Didn't fix anything. You know, I wanted to make music that you could write and print out, and if you wanted to put it on a poster and hang it up and show people what it says, then you could, because it's not riddled with curses and just fuck these people and fuck this. It's like that's not it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like Nelson Mandela, you know, like this guy's voice was very gentle. You see the impact his voice had. You see the impact of his mind, and people respected that. You don't need to be the loudest person and scream all these things and make this really abrasive music about terror and pain. You can still have people feel your message and speak in a tone that is very relatable. And that's the tone that I went for. I just was like, I want to sound like I'm your friend or your cousin or your family member talking to you, not like a guy on a podium, you know. And maybe it's just the innate part of me that my personality, I'm a lot more chill than what people perceive as Flatbush Zombies. But I clearly have another side too. And I just think that as artists, we should be able to showcase all parts of who we are, not just the thing that you know me for, you know?
Yeah, I love that, man. I love the record, and and especially the song "I Can't Lose." And with that, like, you have features on almost all the songs in the record too. Was that hard to accomplish with the restrictions, or like was it all over FaceTime? Like how were you able to get like Sophie Faith on Die For You, for example?
These were all like link ups from just working from before.
Okay.
The only person that I didn't know was Millett, which I'm a fan of her music. And, you know, I remember hearing her music in Europe when I was on tour. And my homie was playing her music. I was like, yo, bro, that shit is hard, bro. It's like, at night I feel lonely, you by my side. You know, I was just like, damn, this girl's voice is incredible, man. And I already follow her from then, you know. And I think I might have said like I'm a fan, and then she followed me back. And when I had made Selfish, it wasn't even called Selfish, it was called Future Proof. And it was ironic because I had wrote in the second verse that when the music is from the soul, it's future proof. And when she had heard the song, she wrote the hook immediately, recorded it, sent it back to me. And I was like, holy shit, I was blown away. And I was like, man, I almost feel like this song is selfish now because of what she had wrote. But also I'm going to extract the part that I took from the verse and make that the whole theme of the project, you know? So collaborating through the quarantine was one of the things that I excelled at. I became, to me anyway, I felt like I became excellent at it. You know, not that I wasn't a great collaborator before, but this is all remote and these are all European artists. You know, I'm the only American artist on the whole project. From the production to the mixing to the mastering, it's all from UK.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that. Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, and do you think you'll work like this in coming up in the future if we're all still, hopefully we won't be out, we'll be outside here soon enough, but like, is this something that you think you'll continue with? Do you like the fact that you can just do it all remotely, or would you rather be in a studio with them in person?
I'd rather be able to look in the person's eyes and shit.
Okay.
You know, I'm a intimate dude. I really feed off of people's energy, and that really is always that I was always played into how good the music turned out. Like I said, it's not ironic. Whether art is so subjective, right? You can't say who's better or what's best. It's all opinionated. But it is ironic that Let It Go was the only song that I made in person with the guys, you know? So although Loyle gave his verse remotely, it was still created, the epicenter of it was created in person. So I do believe that has the strongest payout, which is like being around someone and catching a vibe. You know, music is, to me, it's a report of what you feel that day at that moment. It's an exchange of feelings. It's bigger than just being like, I'm gonna just be quiet and type a verse on my phone, and when I'm ready, I'm gonna get up and record it. It's like I don't personally like doing that. A lot of artists I see, everybody has their own interesting style. I think I've seen Future say that when he's thinking of something, he doesn't even say it out loud until he gets behind the microphone, because once he says it out loud, it's going to change how he records it. Almost like, oh, let me go in the booth right now. because you're like eager to record, and that eagerness creates that unabashed, like there's no filter, there's no wrong or right yet because you didn't write it down. You're not committed to how it sounds. You're not committed to the tempo. You're not committed to the tone. You're not committed to the key. It's just what's
the top
there.
of your head. Yeah, right. I like that.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, because once you're sitting writing it out, you could even overthink it.
Oh, dude.
You're not just going. You're like, does this make as much sense as it should? Or am I really trying to say that? It's like if you're just going off the cuff, you could come up with
You'd be surprised what you come up with, right? I think D'Angelo did that as well.
Yeah, didn't Biggie do that too? He'd just go in there and just start going, and like without even yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing what those guys.
I think you don't really like D'Angelo. He said the first take is the best take, right? I was like, damn, sometimes in the first take you fuck up so many times, and you're just like, damn, you do, oh, let me do it again.
Right.
But at that point, I would say after the third time, you're probably just imitating what you think you should do. So I kind of am very similar in the way that if I record something, I always go back to the first take to take something from it, whether it's something that I sound like I messed up on or the way I pronounce something. Because I feel like there's potency to that first time, because that's what your initial instinct told you to do, is before you try to perfect it and be the best you. And I just attribute it to old school, like we were saying about the 60s. I treat it like tape, regardless of how many gigabytes is on my computer. When the OJs and when the Stylistics and the Shy Lights recorded, all the doo-wop bands with 5 or 6 people in it, they practiced this song for like months before they went to the studio. And then when they went to the studio, they recorded it like once or twice, because they didn't have no money or let me get another tape. Like, were you kidding me?
Somebody's just gonna sit there and cut, like physically cut tape and move things around. Yeah.
Impossible.
Right. Oh, that's great advice, man. Well, and speaking of which, like, my last question for you really is if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Dude, do I?
Probably slew of
it. Too much. Think individualism, right? It's so many different things I could say about being yourself, right? And I know it's like cheeky and corny to be yourself, give yourself a hug. Sometimes you really need to give yourself a hug and merit yourself for the things that you do that make you happy. That's the first thing. And if you want to become an artist, you have to understand that little hug you gave yourself may not be reciprocated for a while. You don't know when you might get that hug. Unfortunately, you may never get it. Some people ask me, do I make music for myself? I definitely make music for myself. Like, I heard some people say that's bad. I think that's great. If I'm impressing myself and my music makes me feel good, then there must be something to that. I'm not crazy. I like good music. So I'm not going to delusionally like something that is bad. I think that initially you start with making music for yourself. And then you realize that your music is healing power to other people. And once you become okay with other people giving judgment on whatever it is, if they like your music or they don't like it, then you can really take it and make it a career, because now you almost okay with whatever it turns out to be, like you can't trivialize and make things bigger than they have to be. Just have fun and be yourself. Because most of the time when you start to get streams and you go on tour and stuff, you're just trying to outdo your last. My homie told me, when your first album, you do your first album is however old you are. You're 28, it took you 28 years to make that first album. And then everybody wants you to make a better album when you're 29, which is 1 year. How are you going to do that? It took you 28 years to think of these things that you thought of. Then they want you to do a better album in not even half time. They want you to do it in light speed time. And I want you to do it better. And I want you to look better. I want you to have more money. But at the same time, I don't want you to remind me that you may leave me because you might blow up, and I don't want everybody to know about you. It's just like all these rules, and who made these rules, So initially you got to be like, yo, do I like this shit? Because if I don't like it, I don't care how many records it sells. I'll have to live with this song and perform it. My biggest fear is to perform a song I hate and everybody loves it. And I think that also couples with self-identification. You know, at a beginning part of my career, I definitely melded. I was more like, oh, I'm gonna just chill back here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna let you do whatever. I'm gonna let all these other artists be, because that's not me. Because I'm humble and I'm nice and shit like that. And I think that that's great. But in music and entertainment, nah, that's not okay. Because if you almost are telling me that you rather sit in the back and you want to be an artist, that's great for a lot of other professions. But if you want to be an artist, you need to be right in the front, because people need to see you, man, especially if you have a message that's going to give people hope. The only way that they believe you is if you right in the camera lens. You know, you got to tell people, yo, this is me. Regardless of you have a pink hat on or green shorts or Timberlands or a tank top, do you. Be right in the camera, because that's, at the end of the day, that's who you are. And you have to be okay with that reflection. And I know that that comes from a lot of fear and insecurity, but you'd be surprised how that would give you power. You know, you look at the old Snoop Dogg videos when he first came out, it was like a whole thing about Snoop Dogg is one of the most confident individuals ever. You know, we toured with him. We toured with him a couple years ago. Wow. Amazing person. You would never think this guy was shy. He was shy in those videos. Look how confident he is. Those early videos, the first couple of you, he can't even look at the camera because he's like, yo, like, this is weird. You know, this is the first time I ever did this, but that gives you power. You know, you got to see that. And you know, you shouldn't, I'm not embarrassed about anything that I did. I don't listen to my voice when I was 15 and be like, turn it off, turn it off. I'm like, turn it louder, because I kind of need to, like, you know, I need to remind myself of who I was and who I am now, you know. So hopefully hopefully this will help any kids, any adults, anybody with a dream, you know, because I was that kid too, you know. I'll still pay any amount to go see any person once things open back up. I'm not gonna just email the promoter and ask for free tickets to go to a show. I'll pay that money to see these artists be themselves and do their thing. One of the last shows I went to see was Nalu for Yanya out here in California. It was a great show, you know, and I don't even remember if I paid for my ticket or not. You know, I just remember it was great.
It was great.
I want to give that experience to everyone, you know, and share that and be part of something that I think really will last the test of time, man, and have longevity. You know, I think that's what all artists want anyway. Bringing it backward.